Hi, I'm Bob Balch with the That's Jesus channel, and today is the last video in the series of videos on the Michael Lawrence Pousson case in Jefferson County, Texas. Michael was accused of aggravated sexual assault against a child for more than 2 years in 2 different counties, with someone over 17 years old, with a victim under 13 years old. And it's pretty tough case. I was juror number 8, the jury foreman, and the verdict was...
This man charged with continuous sexual abuse of a child ended today with a hung jury.
A hung jury. And so the series of videos is to talk about what I went through during this jury process. And this is the last video because the previous one, and if you want to see all the other videos, please check the comments section or the description section of this video. This is the last one because we were given the opportunity to talk to the judge and the attorneys afterwards to ask some questions. Some of the questions that were asked were about the DNA. We didn't know it was trace DNA, and what does that mean exactly? And that really wasn't thoroughly explained during the trial at all. And basically, the DNA is not from a hair, but it was from a bodily fluid. If we had known that in the jury room, probably would have changed at least one of the minds of the 3 jurors that said not guilty. Just that it was a bodily fluid. It wasn't something that happened in the laundry. It was a bodily fluid. Now, which bodily fluid? Was it spit? Was it semen? Was it saliva? Was it sweat? Don't know, but it was a fluid. And so that would have probably changed at least one of the minds, the mind of at least one of the jurors. The other thing was the interviews at the local agency here in Jefferson County. Why couldn't we see the interviews? And the reason for that is they are just inadmissible. The defendant gets, his defense attorney gets the opportunity to cross-examine any type of evidence, and you can't cross-examine a video. Now, if it's a police video, that's something different, I'm sure. But this type of video, they were not admissible, and should have been probably when the defense attorney said that we would be seeing those videos in her opening arguments, probably should have been brought up then. No, you're not going to be able to see those videos. Those are inadmissible. And so that was another thing. We talked about several things with the judge about, does he have any other outstanding cases that are coming? Does he have an arrest record? All those things. And no, he didn't have a record. Will this case be retried? It probably will be retried if everybody's willing to get back up on the witness stand and everything. And maybe because this was 9-3 and they're going to be able to figure out, hey, I know what those 3 people were looking for. We can kind of harp on those things a little bit more during the case so that there won't be any questions. It was just, the judge was very kind, very nice. Her name is Rachel West, at the 252nd Court here in Beaumont, Texas, Jefferson County, Texas. And I thought she did a really good job. Very kind, personable after the case. Didn't browbeat us and tell us, you guys should have come up with a verdict or something like that. I kind of felt like I let everybody down because I was a foreman of the jury and we couldn't come to a consensus. But after talking to her, I don't feel bad about that. In fact, because the 3 jurors who thought that the defendant was not guilty, if they had been convinced to vote guilty, there would have been something in the back of their mind, I'm sure. Was he really guilty? I first said he was not guilty. Was he really guilty? And that really would have weighed heavily on them. And that's not fair for them to change their vote on whether he was guilty or not based on peer pressure or, browbeating or anything like that. And I apologize to them if that's the way it came across. But they didn't change their vote. And so they don't have to have that nagging feeling in the back of their head, did I just convict an innocent person? But I think that the next trial, no one, if it's done again and everything is covered that we had questions about, that set of jurors won't have any doubt whatsoever in their mind. I don't know if it would be a world record as far as time-wise, how fast they would come up with a verdict. But I do believe that if the points of issues that were raised by the jurors who thought he was not guilty, if those are addressed, taken care of, that the next jury won't have any doubts, and that makes me feel good. That he's going to be tried again. That's awful. It's costly, it's expensive, but the next jury, they won't have any doubts whatsoever, and so that makes me feel good. I think that we did our job, and I think that a lot of the jurors, at least two of them, after they talked to the judge and they talked to the attorneys, probably would have voted guilty. I'm just assuming that because the questions that they had in their mind were addressed by the judge and the attorneys that they couldn't tell us during the trial. The attorneys were both very nice. The defense attorney, I've got to hand it to her. She got a hung jury. That's exactly what she's looking for. She's looking for a not guilty verdict, but the next best thing is to keep her client out of prison just a little bit longer, right? Or keep him out of prison and then have a jury that's so split that the district attorney's office doesn't know whether or not to prosecute again, and he eventually just goes free. That's what you're looking for in a defense attorney. I think she did a great job doing that because we had a split decision. I mean, it was 9-3. It was not unanimous. She did exactly what she was hired to do. What was she hired to do? Defense attorneys, in my opinion, what a defense attorney is hired to do is discredit the witnesses for the prosecution, discredit them somehow, some way, trip them up. And if you can't discredit them, then make them look foolish on the stand. Ask them questions that are confusing so that they're stumbling over their words. Ask them questions that get them upset so that they don't have their composure. Ask them those questions that make them contradict themselves because the questions are so multi-layered that they just can't answer them. That's if you can't beat the witness by contradicting something that they say, you got to attempt to have them contradict themselves. And I think that the defense attorney did a great job of doing that. Now, the prosecution attorney, I really liked her too. I think she did a fine job. It was a tough case. We were asked in voir dire that can you convict, if you believe the little girl, can you convict if you don't have any other evidence? And that's a good question. I think a better question would have been this. Do you need additional evidence in order to believe the little girl? Is her testimony alone with no other evidence going to be enough? If she does not have any corroborating evidence, can you believe her beyond the shadow of a doubt? Right? And I think that's what happened in our case. There wasn't a lot of corroborating evidence, and so they could not believe the little girl beyond the shadow of a doubt. There was doubt. And so I think during voir dire, that's one of the, instead of saying, if you believe her beyond the shadow of a doubt, do you have to have additional evidence? I think the question should be, do you have to have additional evidence in order to believe a witness beyond the shadow of a doubt? So I think that was a mistake. I think overall, what the hardest part of this trial was making sense of everything. The questions were pretty rapid fire, so that most of the people on the jury, I mean, I'm a pretty fast writer. I was a counterintelligence agent in the Army, and I'm used to taking lots of notes really fast when I was interviewing someone, and so I can write pretty quick. But I was having a tough time keeping up. And once we were in the jury room, I realized that I had missed a couple of things. And so, in spite of the fact that I've got a notebook just filled from edge of page to edge of page, hardly any lines in there. So, using abbreviations for each person and all that kind of stuff. So, if the questions are rapid fire, that's really, it's hard for the jury to keep up with that if they're writing it all down. But then again, if it's going so slow, you got to keep everybody's attention. So I think some visuals, all of the visuals where she had evidence or exhibits on a projector tray, none of us could see those words. Couldn't see them. I got really good vision with my glasses on. I couldn't see any of those words. I mean, I could squint, but that was not so good. So that was an issue. I thought that the lack of a real timeline, getting out butcher block paper, on one of those flip boards and writing, okay, so in this year, this happened, this month this happened, this month this happened, this month this happened, and just going through it, even if it's just in the closing statement, just to wrap everything up so that everyone has a timeline to understand. Some of the witnesses, especially the first DNA witness, since this case is so convoluted because there are two sets of sexual abuse nurse exams. There are three sets of interviews with the Jefferson County facility that interviews victims. There are multiple sets of DNA. There's all kinds of stuff because it happens in different years and different counties. That when the witnesses were being questioned, they were going back and forth between those dates. And that was confusing. And we didn't realize they were going back and forth between those dates until later on in the testimony. You're like, oh, they must have swapped back to 2018 there for a second because they're talking about a second interview at that facility. Or they must have, this was the date that the report got mailed out. That's before the second alleged assault. So this whole thing must be from the 2018. We didn't know the first DNA expert. We didn't know until 3/4 through the interview what year it was from. So that was very confusing. Just having all of that info, it would have been nice, I think, if you've got to recall the witness. I don't know if you can do that, right? I don't know if you can say, I'm going to have mom as the witness, and we're only going to talk about the things that happened in 2018 and up to 2020, right? Or we're only going to talk about the things that happened in Orange County, Texas. That's all we're going to talk about. And then okay, this is the Orange County stuff. And then you have the DNA from the Orange County stuff come in. And then you have the interviewer for the Orange County stuff and the police for the Orange County stuff and all that kind of stuff. And they say, okay, we're bringing mom back in, and now we're going to talk about the stuff that happened in 2021. So, hey, mom, now we talked about stuff in 2018. Bring us up to date. What has happened since the defendant's son moved out, right? What has happened? And you're like, okay, this happened, and then here's the second thing that happened, and here's then you bring in the DNA evidence from 2021 and the interviews from 2021 and the police reports from 2021, all that kind of good stuff. And then you say, okay, so now we're going to bring in the little girl, and she's going to bring it all together for us. I don't know if you can do that or not. I will say that when the little girl said, just like he did to my cousin, boy, that snapped our eyes open like, oh my goodness, he did it to someone else. Would have liked more testimony from the cousin. I really liked it that she gave testimony, and I think the defense did a good job of trying to discredit her by asking, well, was it on the thigh or the actual vagina, or what was he touching, and how was he touching, all that type of thing. I would have liked to have heard more from her exactly when she informed the little complainant, exactly when, or the conversation that was being had when she told mom about it, her exam, all that kind of stuff. I would have liked more from her. Likewise, the defendant, you know what's going to be in evidence, right? You know what's going to be in evidence. And so if the defendant says, I worked 6 days a week, 10 hours a day for a year, and you know that the defense hasn't brought out any evidence, you can ask, oh, well, do you have any time cards to prove that? Oh, no? Okay. I don't know if you can ask questions like that. Did you bring a coworker to did you ask any coworkers to corroborate how many hours you worked? Oh, you didn't? Oh, okay. Did you bring bank statements that says how much money you got paid and when we know how much money you made an hour? Oh, you didn't? Oh, okay. And just let everybody know he doesn't have an alibi. It's all made up. Mom said that he worked Monday through Thursday. He said he worked 6 days a week. That's an inconsistency. And so we need to find out if he's talking about 2020 for a 4-week period, or is he talking about all of 2020? Is mom talking about, that took place for 2 months in the middle of the summer, or is she talking about how long that took place? That would have been nice to know. But regardless, it was great talking to them, and now I feel more relieved than ever that the 9-3 vote could have been, if we had known all that other information, might have been a unanimous verdict for guilty, but it wasn't. Just wasn't. I'm not going to lose any sleep over it. If the defendant is, because I'm sure that his attorney knows now after talking to the jury, it would be good to have time cards and all. If he has an alibi for all those things, my goodness, get that alibi in place, because you don't want to go to prison if you're innocent, and I don't want him to go to prison if he's innocent. But based on the evidence that we saw, at least that I saw, that was not the case. So hopefully, if this case comes to trial again, both the prosecuting attorney and the defense attorney will have a better presentation of all the facts, and the jury can quickly come to a decision of either not guilty or guilty based on the presentation of facts. Hi, so I am putting all these videos together and getting them ready to publish, and I want to pop in here one last time as a little aftermath to the aftermath. Just done a lot of thinking about why this happened in this case, and I'd like to give some advice to the prosecutors out there as to why this case, I think, did not result in a guilty verdict. My personal opinion is that it should have, and I just kept thinking about why didn't it. And so here's my thoughts on that. I believe there are a lot of people in the United States today that just do not trust law enforcement. They don't trust the police. They don't trust the investigators, the detectives. They certainly don't trust the district attorneys. And is there a reason for that? I think there is a lot of reason for that. I personally don't trust a lot of police, and I'm related to police because of some things that have happened to family members and things that I see in the news. And so, do I just implicitly trust the police like I used to? No. And I think that prosecutors need to understand that. People do not implicitly trust the police anymore. They don't implicitly trust the reports anymore. They don't implicitly just trust what they're being told in a trial anymore. And so, what do you need to do as a prosecutor to take care of that? You need to have all of your I's dotted and all of your T's crossed. You need to go into the case not just assuming that, okay, these jurors have an empty opinion about this case, and I just need to tip the scales so that they believe the defendant is guilty. It's no longer like that, I don't think. I believe you need to go into the case knowing that there are going to be jurors that have an animosity towards law enforcement already. You're going to have to prove that law enforcement is trustworthy, at least in this case. So anything that was generally just an assumption before needs to be proven. So if law enforcement says, hey, this person said XYZ, you need to prove that that person said XYZ. You need to have something on film. You need to have a corroborating statement by someone who's not police. If someone says, it's not our policy to talk to the sexual assault victim, they want to see that policy. Is that guy really doing what his policy says, or is there something in writing that says he's not supposed to? Is there a list of all of the evidence that was gathered? That's still one of the questions that the defense attorney in this case brought up, was the collection of the sheets. Where are those sheets? Did they ever get submitted for the DNA crime lab to analyze for anything on those sheets? And if not, are those sheets just simply sitting in evidence somewhere? Or would have been great to have sheets that would have DNA on the sheets from the defendant in this case. It says, why are these little girls' sheets definitely have the DNAs of the defendant on those sheets? So just a word of advice, you need to walk into the trial not thinking that everyone has a blank mind on this, and you're going to only fill that mind up with evidence, and then nothing else is going to be considered. A lot of defendants, that because of the TV shows CSI and 24 Hours and Law and Order and all those things, they're going to come into the case thinking this is all going to be tied up in a neat bow, and it's all going to be just so easy to make a decision. Everybody knows what the decision is going to have to be. It is not like that. They're not going to, as a former teacher, inference is not a skill that a lot of people have today. Things are spelled out for them on TV now, so you can't just rely on people inferring things from the evidence and making a logical conclusion. You have to show all of the steps in between. So I just felt like I needed to add that just in case a prosecutor is watching this video. You can't just make those assumptions. So I think that there will be more and more instances as auditing videos, like First Amendment audit videos, and DNA evidence shows people were convicted who were not really guilty. All of those things are going to result in more and more and more jurors being selected who don't have a propensity to believe the prosecution just out of hand anymore. They are going to believe that that person is not only presumed innocent unless proven guilty, they are presumed innocent unless the prosecution takes every single conceivable excuse out of the way. Some jurors are just coming up with a narrative all their own to explain why that defendant must be not guilty, and that's a very difficult position for a prosecutor to be in, to sit down and come up with all of these alternatives to reality as to explain why the defendant could have been railroaded and could have been misunderstood and could have been the victim of someone's harassment and all of those things, and then present evidence that explains away all of those alternatives to what really happened. And that's a hard position. But I think if you want more convictions for people that are really guilty, that's what you're going to have to do. So that is it. Juror number 8, foreman of the jury, jury pool number 31. It's over. So I'm going to not worry about this case. And Mr. Pousson, if you're watching this, I wish you the best of luck. If you're innocent, I truly, truly hope that if this is taken to trial again, that you will be found not guilty. If you did do this crime, then my hope is that you'll be found guilty. And my real hope, Mr. Pousson, is that if you are guilty, that not only will the jury find you guilty, but that you will find Jesus, because he's the answer for all of this. Even if you go to prison, you can find Jesus, and you can be an influence for the people there. And that's really all I can say to you. For the little girl who had this happen to her, God bless you. You just hang in there and put Jesus in your life, and it will. You can use this as a testimony of overcoming a great deal of adversity and a great deal of tragedy in your life, and how you can rise above that and influence other people to rise above that as well. To the attorneys, best of luck to both of you. I think you're both excel at your profession. To my other jurors, it was an honor with each and every one of you. Whether we agreed or not, I think that we tried our very best to come to a conclusion based on the evidence as we saw it and the way that we felt about it. And so I wish you all the very best of luck. And I would be proud to serve on a jury with each and every one of you, even those that I disagreed with. I would be proud to serve on a jury with each and every one of you in the future, because you're a person of conviction, and that's what really matters in life nowadays. You got to be a person of conviction, or you're just going to fall for anything and everything. To the viewer, thank you so much. If you haven't seen all these videos, it's in the description. And I thank you for watching all the way to the end. I hope you have a great day. I'm Bob Balch with the That's Jesus channel. Be blessed.